Hello, everyone. Welcome in. This is the Shriners Children 500, and all I can say is hopefully the children of Shriners Hospital were not there because that would have been a tough one for them on that day. And whatever money was made, let's just all hope it goes to help those children. We've got quite a bit to talk about. I'm not sure it'll all fit in into probably could do three separate videos from today's episode, but we're going to do the best we can. So let's go ahead and get started in this post race recap. All right. Yes. That is actually the closest car camera we had of Kyle Busch all day long, unfortunately, for myself. But welcome into the post race show here on Stuck in the Catch Fence. My name is Ryan Pierce, the host, joined by Travis Butt and Joe Spillman, who has a very, very long name down there. Kentucky Speedway is dead. Why? This is Joe's Let's Talk About It. Just go ahead, putting in the title of his Let's Talk About It all ready to begin. But I'll get a short intro from Travis. Travis, how are you?
Hanging in there, just trying to get through the night and ready for next weekend. That's all. That's all we look forward to.
Joe, how are you?
I'm okay, Ryan. I've
You don't
taken a
look
mental
okay,
break.
Joe. You don't look
You
okay.
know, I had to take a mental break for about 2 hours earlier today, just after the race, just about 7:10. I just kind of cut myself off to the world until now, but I'm back and I think I'm doing okay.
All right. Well, we did have a race today. Not sure if you guys knew the Shriners Children 500 post race right now, where Mr. Christopher Bell ended up winning the race. Christopher Bell, unfortunately for me, the last time they were here, I chose him to win the NASCAR championship very early on in my bold prediction and blew a brake rotor. And then what makes it even sweeter is he comes back and wins the spring race. So he ends up winning this race. Toyota looked really, really good. And, from a, a standpoint of that, this is the first Toyota win in the new body style. So I felt like we knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time. It kind of makes sense that it's at, in a mile or a mile and a half. But, Christopher Bell, a really, really good driver, probably a really good underrated driver. But, what is your overall thoughts, Joe, on Christopher Bell winning today?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of overdue, like you said last year. He went here, blew a brake rotor. I actually forgot it was a brake rotor, but kind of took himself out. But Christopher Bell always has the potential to win a race, and I kind of felt like I was watching an F1 race today. What was he ended up winning by like 5.5 seconds, I think.
The largest
Uh,
margin of victory in next gen car history.
Yeah, I know he led the last 41 laps. So that typically that's not what NASCAR fans are into. We like to see a little bit closer racing. Just didn't get it done today, but congratulations to Christopher Bell. I mean, he ran a hell of a race.
What are your overall thoughts today, Travis, on Christopher Bell? I would dominate the last stage, but I'm not sure dominating the race would be the right term.
I think you just look at him in practice. He was solid in practice, and I think if I was a smarter man, I would have put some money on him. But I got a text with about 50 or 60 to go, and from my cousin Shane, and he goes, "Who should you bet on?" And I said, put it on Bell. I think he's going to come back to the field and win it. And of course, he came back and win. So I think you just got to look at, it was good for Toyota. Good for them. They finally got a win. They're got to be licking their chops when they come back in Phoenix a little bit. So I think it was just an overall, it is what it is. Good race and good race for Bell. He's always been good about anywhere he goes. So it was just a race, in my opinion. There was nothing that was super special about the race.
Yeah, it wasn't the biggest spectacles from what we've seen, especially like, the first 3 weeks I feel like have been really, really good for NASCAR fans. And want to welcome in Ray and Christopher. Appreciate you guys joining, and everybody else that's joining in. Make sure you jump in the comments below if you got questions or want to talk about anything, when it comes to that NASCAR race today. I will jump in with what Christopher said, talking to Travis, but also and talking to Joe as well. It's finally the first race that we saw Chevy actually show that they had any type of struggles. They did not look fast the entire weekend. They were not great in practice. They did not do well in qualifying. I mean, Chase and William were okay, but I don't think were serious threats for the pole. And then when the race happened, they got caught back in traffic. Chase and William were pretty much the only ones that could get up past the 15th, spot, and then just really got back in traffic and just stayed there, and it's kind of it's interesting. Do you think with that happening that Joe, I'll go ahead and give it to you first. Does that worry you come championship weekend whenever they come back here with the new, aero package that Ford and Toyota have that might be some concern?
Well, yeah, I mean, being a Chevy guy, I would hope that they get it figured out by then, obviously. But what we saw out of Chevrolet today, I think Ross Chastain was the only Chevy that finished in the top 10, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And his car was going backward there toward the end, but I think he just ran out of car. I think his tires were chewed up, but
Yeah, you got Bell,
Ross Chastain.
Busher, Gibbs, Brett Keselowski, Blaney. There's Chastain at 6. Truex, Dowd, Briscoe, Reddick, Hamlin, Gregson, and then Suarez in 13th. Who would, if you ever would have put money down that Suarez would have been the second Chevy,
Well,
probably.
and I don't think any of us midweek, we did the betting show, and one of our picks was to, Chevrolet to be, the car manufacturer that finished the best, and we were a little bit off on that one. I don't think any of us predicted that they would go in to Phoenix today and just be absolutely horrible, and it does concern me. It concerns me a lot, and let's see where they're at on the next couple of short tracks. Let's see what happens. But, just very disappointing day for them. Really a very disappointing day for everybody, I think, except maybe Christopher Bell, who got a win today. But, yeah, I'm very concerned about this.
Travis, same question to you. After seeing this, does it concern you at all, or do you think they got to play catch up now?
I think Chevy's is a smart manufacturer. I think they were playing a little poker face, if we're going to be honest. I think they found something in the test, back in, when that was December or January, whenever that test was. And I think they found something, and I think they just didn't want to give it out. I think they're playing a little poker face. I think they were inching their way towards things, and I think they're going to save what they think they found or what they might have found over practice in the race. And I fully expect them, when it comes to Phoenix in 245 days, that they are going to compete and dominate people. And the reason I think that, I think it's just, I don't know. It's just the way I is. They were way off and way off of people to just say, are they struggling? I think they know they're coming back, and they know that is a crucial thing. You think about it. If a basketball team beats you, like heavily, you're going to prepare for them more. If Christopher Bell and them just dominate, and Toyo's dominated, what are they going to do? Yeah, will they still, because it's a championship race, will they still prepare pretty hard for it? Yes, but I think they're not going to do as much as maybe what they would do if Chevy came out and gave them a good run for it. So I think Chevy people are smart. I think they got a little bit more up their sleeve than what they showed. I'm not concerned. I when it comes to championship race, when we get down that in 245 days and we have this post race show, I could be completely wrong, but I would almost pull this back up and say, hey, Chevy was just saving a little bit. I think they got a little bit up their sleeve that they didn't really show.
I think in NASCAR, like, owners are taught one thing or feel one thing, and that's just to pound other people's Peters into the ground. I don't think Kyle Larson's going to be sneaking up on anybody come championship Sunday. Like, he duped us. That Kyle Larson, we didn't know he was that good. They got us. But
Hey,
I guess it's possible.
I think they got a little bit more up their sleeve than what they showed. I just
Better hope so,
oh
or they won't be
yeah,
winning the championship.
yeah. Christopher Bell just passed post race inspection, so it is
There
an
we go.
official win.
There we go. We
But
always have to worry about that.
I think they got a little bit more up their sleeve than what they showed today. And Hendrick car's running. I know pit strategy was a little bit back there, but I just don't see them running that bad come in 245 days again.
Chris says it's early. I'm not worried about Chevy. We're not worried about Chevy at all. It's just the track. Like I'm not worried that Kyle Busch will have a decent year. I know for a fact he will not win a championship because the championship's at this racetrack. I don't give a shit what happens. There's just nothing that's going to change. We got Ray had some bad luck. Let me do the one with the grammatical correction. Had some bad luck when the caution fell. That is true. And then I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Corey asked, do you guys think Ty Gibbs will get his first win? I think we're all in consensus that Ty Gibbs is probably going to get his first win this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be better odds that he didn't get his first. Like you would make more money if he doesn't win this year versus the opposite. So, again, we're looking back at the final results here, and very, very, very small writing. If you guys can see that, Eric Jones ends up in 31st, which was way better than what he ran today. Austin Dillon, congratulations to him. Couldn't make it 10 laps without getting caught in another wreck. That just seems par for the course. Kyle Busch was terrible today. Alex Bowman finished in 20th. I thought he was up in 12th at one point. Bubba Wallace was nowhere to be found. Carson Hocevar kind of got in trouble on pit road. That really ruined his day on a day that was tough to pass for a lot of people. Noah Gragson, again, another good day. I do want to commend, when it comes to Stuart Haas, that Noah Gragson and Chase Briscoe look like they're pretty solid. Michael McDowell, another really good day for him. Tyler Reddick was the class of the field, and then late in that third stage just couldn't do anything. Martin Truex showed that he was kind of fast, but not really. And then we did the Are We Worried? And I brought up RFK, and I said that I wasn't worried, or I was worried about them currently, but I thought that they would bounce out of it. And sure enough, they get a number 2 and number 4, even though they really weren't up there the entire day until that last cycle of stuff going on. So, again, it's just real hard unless you want to talk about 3 or 4 guys in this race that you're like, oh yeah, they maybe kind of possibly had a chance, but nobody really had a chance unless you were up front. Christopher Bell just seemed like he had the best car today in terms of being able to maneuver through traffic. But, we made a lot about Travis's package. And it's not just Travis's package because he did nothing to own or design it or alter it or nothing. But we joked around that Travis, had a lot of faith going into this. And to me, this was just another NASCAR gimmick, another way for NASCAR to spend our money to not put horsepower into the cars. So
Denny Hamlin said it takes one call and they could have it by Friday. He said one call.
Everybody besides Steve Phelps has said that. So I'm going to ask you the question, Joe. I know this has been on your mind. Will NASCAR ever change? Will they add horsepower to these cars? Are they finally going to concede defeat when it comes to the short track package with the next gen car?
Well, I think that at some point they're going to have to concede defeat. I don't know how many short tracks that we're going to go to with this next gen car and keep seeing the same. I don't even know the best word for it. Keep seeing the same shit over and over. I mean, clearly the next gen car has been an improvement in many ways, especially on the 1.5 miles, which is the bread and butter, right? But at the end of the day, it's almost killed the short tracks. I think you may have did a video about that last year already. The short tracks are dying, and I hate that because that is a historical thing that all true NASCAR fans love. They love going to the Bristol. I mean, Richmond or Phoenix used to be a good race. I thought there was nothing better than watching them cars dive down below the banking on the restarts and pass. And we got a little bit of that today, but outside of the restarts today, the racing was just total horseshit. I mean, excuse my language. I just don't know anything better to say. I think at some point NASCAR is going to have to say, we got to make this a little bit more exciting. I don't know, 900, 1100 horsepower, maybe a far stretch, but I guarantee if you do that, it's going to make for some exciting racing. And I think at some point they're going to have to do it, but do I think they will? That answer is probably no, not in the foreseeable future.
Well, Travis, I know you're a little bit more patient than me and Joe. Are you willing to, give Bristol a chance to see if it has changed? And then we got a road course coming up, or do you, to me, I didn't notice anything different. I mean, if you would have played this on a loop last year compared to this year, I don't know anything different. I know that, there's statistics out there that says there's more passing. It wasn't a lot more. If a car's like here at one scoring line and then comes at here at one scoring line, is that considered a pass? Do you have to clearly pass the car? Like there's tons of minute details that whatever statistic you're trying to find out to support your cause, I'm sure you can find. But what are your thoughts after one test from this new equation that NASCAR has put into effect?
Willing to say I want to see Bristol and I want to see like Lawrenceville. I'm excited for the road courses a little bit because you got some higher speed tracks there. There's more braking zones, there's more things like that. What does it look like that? I'm not gonna just say trash it. It's not any good just because we saw Phoenix. And I think we alluded to this a little bit about what makes a good race. Is it because there's multiple grooves? Is it? I think you and Joe could have cuddled together, Ray, because I think Joe said he fell asleep too. Yeah, but I want to see Bristol. I know we get to see it live. I want to see Bristol. I want to see a road course, and then I'll make my assumption. Phoenix is just too. It's hard to pass there, and I think we see that, and we've seen that in the past with the next gen, where Bristol and some of these other tracks you might be able to get some passing in. So I'm not gonna lay it to rest yet. I've said it since the beginning of last year when I started coming on the show. What's gonna make short track racing and some of the stuff better? At 100 horsepower, it's gonna separate the boys to the men. So I'm gonna not let it die. I'm excited to see what happens next week. Get a good, that would actually give me a test because that has progressive banking. There has some different lanes there. You can run the bottom, you can run the top, and stuff like that. So
no bias from Shane at all. See, that kind of goes to your point too, Travis. You're like, I thought this package was great if Kyle Larson was worth a damn today.
Yeah,
but he wasn't.
And I think you got to think about that way
too.
He
wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
go ahead, Travis. I'm sorry.
No, and what do we consider a good race? And I think Ryan would say if Kyle Busch would have won, hell of a race. If Kyle Larson would have won, I think Joe and I would have been like, not too bad of a race. But you look at Phoenix, and I think you see, who runs well there? Well, who's usually running well, or who has a good setup? It's not a driver track. It's just, a Homestead, a Kansas, a Vegas. Some of these other tracks are very, very, very much a driver track too. They have, Bristol, for instance, they have a driver tendency, who's going to come out in some of these things. And you think about who wins in some of these races. You got Kyle Busch that wins, Logano, Hamlin, Larson, some of the higher ranked people. Yeah. So I'm not going to give it away yet. I want to see what Bristol. If Bristol's a complete dead, I say, oh well. But the next process, I think, when it comes to some of this stuff, is like add some horsepower, things like that. So if the drivers want it, we'll see. But I'm not gonna say no to the package yet.
Yeah, and this conversation can carry either for a long time, multiple different ways, however. But I do think it's fair to say, what is a good race? To me, if you're a fan of this sport, your driver's going to lose a hell of a lot more than he wins. So if your driver's losing, like a good year, your driver loses 30 times. I mean, that's a good year if he wins 6 and loses 30. You know, that's a really good year. So during the 30 times that my driver loses, and that's if I choose a good driver, um, what am I staying for the other X amount of times? And it's to be entertained. So the entertainment value is what holds you in. And I think no matter what happens, Phoenix will never ever get the benefit of the doubt because we lost what was a really good racetrack, when it came to Miami. I mean, we had great races there. We had guys that, you thought were going to do really good. You thought we're going to come back. I mean, it was a slog. Like, we went from day to night. Like, there's just so many different factors that changed with Miami. And it's a driver's racetrack. You want to run quarter inch from the wall to win the race? You can do that. You want to be like Kevin Harvick and you want to run right on the bottom, right along the line to set your car up that way? You can do that, but there's other ways you can run it as well. And with Phoenix, we're just not getting that. So if we're not getting that, then are we getting entertained? And I think for a majority of people today, that watch this, I hope that Atlanta was your first ever NASCAR race if you never watched the sport versus this one. And then if you found out that this was the track that they hold the championship, I think you'd be very disappointed. To say, I'm going to go through the grind of a NASCAR season, 36 weeks long, 37 weeks long, actually, if you include the All-Star race. And then this is what it culminates as. Like you said, Travis, you got a pretty good idea really, really early on who's going to win, unless there's a late caution and you get the number 1 pit stall, and that might end up winning you a championship as well, which it literally kept Denny Hamlin in the race having the number 1 pit stall. Like, and that's silly. Like that, yeah, it shouldn't matter, but it shouldn't, in my mind, make up for what a driver's doing on the track. And, I just want to be entertained. I want to see drivers be able to do things, to be able to change the car, to be able to alter the car, to be able to alter the setup. And we're not seeing that, and Joe, like you said, we got Kentucky Speedway that's literally filling in with weeds and had really, really good races there, in my opinion. Now, were they the greatest races of all time? No, but I've never left Kentucky Speedway the day that today, like I left Phoenix, just watching it. I just completely baffled. Like, who the hell thought, outside of the ability to make adjustments there to make it look nicer, that this is where this sport should culminate for a champion? I mean, and I don't think that's going to change. I think NASCAR is steadfast that they're not going to change that. And how much money, I would love to know this, which we'll never know as well. How much money has gone in to try to figure out a better aero package? How many engineers are being used? How many wind tunnels are being used? How many alterations of things are being used versus the manufacturers, like you said, Travis, today said we could add 100 horsepower tomorrow and it costs us next to nothing. Only reason why they don't do that, so like BJ McLeod could still stay in the race, which he might have had a better race car than Kyle Busch today if he was still running. So it doesn't even really matter. So I'm at a loss. I just, I'm confused.
I think
I'm frustrated.
You think about that, but you talk about that, but who is running in the Cup Series now that does not build their own engines? BJ McLeod last year ended up going to Chevy, so he didn't build any more in-house motors, and he's not racing anymore. There's not a person, there's not even a team in the Cup Series anymore that's building their own house motors. And look at, even the Xfinity Series, there might only be like 2 or 3 teams that's doing that anymore. So I think with the Cup Series, they can add 100 horsepower and it would not make a change for any of the Cup teams because they're all have a Roush String Gates motor, they have an RCR motor, or ECR, sorry, an ECR motor, or they got a Hendrick motor. That's it. There's only 3, there's only 3 possibilities.
So let me ask you this. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that not adding horsepower to the Cup cars is just asinine. At a short track with the short track package. Why is the decision? That's what I want to know. What do you guys think? Why is the decision being made that we're not going to add horsepower to these cars?
Honda.
What's the reason for that?
Honda. One word, Honda. I seriously, I think if you look at Steve Phelps and some of these people talk, they all say the same thing. Oh, well, we're doing all this stuff so we can maybe get another manufacturer in here. Who gives 2 damns about another manufacturer? Why? Like, why is the NBA not have 4 manufacturers of basketballs? Why? Like, who cares? Who cares? Golf is different because, people play with better equipment. But whatever. You have manufacturers, You have 3 good manufacturers that's putting a lot of money in this sport. Why not just stick with those 3 that you got? If Dodge comes in, cool. But I don't think anyone would complain about horsepower. People always talk about how fast their car is. Oh, my car goes from 0 to 80 in 6.4 seconds. But
Yeah.
they're just trying to bring in more electrified stuff. They're bringing this and that. They're doing that because they want to interest people with horsepower, which makes, I don't know, no sense because you see IndyCar go, I know they're a 4-cylinder motor, but they go 25 miles per hour around, in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I don't know. That's just, talk about manufacturing and using the horsepower and things like that.
To answer your question, Joe, I think at this point it's almost like a power struggle that they just aren't willing to give it up. I mean, I think they have shown time and time again that what they are trying to do is failed. And if it was for another manufacturer, which we're just now hearing about Honda, you could have said the same thing when they were talking about BMW. You could have said the same thing when they were talking about Dodge. Like, if these teams wanted to join in, they would join in. Like to make a NASCAR, it costs millions of dollars less than what it does a Formula One car. And there's all kinds of different, not engine manufacturers, but manufacturers of the chassis and things of that nature. There may only be, Mercedes, Honda, and McLaren that are making engines. But at the same time, like, Formula One just sounds like anybody that wants to get in. Aston Martin, sure, jump in. Like Kick Sauber, sure, you jump in. Williams, yeah, sure, jump in. Like, it just doesn't make any sense in Formula One. At least on now respect, understands like, yeah, we got good enough product. You want to jump in, jump in. If you don't, fuck it, I don't care. You don't jump in then. And it seems like NASCAR is just using this as a cop out, but I don't know what the cop out's for, other than,
Right.
I guess just big heads can say that, no, like, because now it's getting to the point that these people that it would cost are speaking out. And what do they have to gain from that? I guess besides being thrown under the bus by Steve Phelps, like, no, everything that guy says is bullshit. I don't know. I don't know why they don't do that. But and the only other thing I can think, and I made this video last week. And first off, if you think a hybrid engine is quiet and doesn't make noise, you're stupid. I have to get that off my chest. But I literally watched the IndyCar race today at St. Pete at the airport, airfield. It was interesting. It was pretty neat. Those were not quiet race cars going around that track. I think maybe the only thing I can tell you, Joe, that makes logical sense is they're kicking the can down the road until they're willing to jump into hybrid. And maybe that's when Honda wants to jump into, because everything that they do right now is make hybrid engines. That's the only thing that I can come up with. Is this just kicking a can down the road?
I can't fathom it, and I don't understand it, and I can't wrap my head around it, and keeps pissing me off and pissing me off. And Travis, I know this is comparing apples to oranges, but how many horsepower in a sprint car typically? 900, 930?
Yeah, it's 900.
Somewhere around there.
It's like 7 something, yeah, 7 to 8, 7 to 9. But there's, I think 880 something to 900 something in a late model, in a dirt late model.
And so, what do you think a late model or a sprint car would look like if you put 550 horsepower in it?
They do that with the some of the they have some of those lower sprint cars and stuff, and they just platter to the metal and see how fast you can go there. So,
right,
yeah, a 410 sprint is anywhere between 880 to 900 horsepower.
But you're talking about a lot lighter sprint car usually, correct?
But yes,
much more dangerous. That's for damn sure.
Yes.
What the point is, and like I said, I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but there's a reason why there's 800, 900 horsepower in a sprint car and in a late model. It's for power. It's to gas around the turns. It's to provide quality racing. It doesn't take an engineer to say, hey, maybe if we up the horsepower on these shorter tracks, maybe the fans will get a little bit more interested in these races and not be pissed off at the end of the race going, we just watched the car win by 7.5 seconds after leading the last 41 laps by 7.5 seconds. I mean, that's just where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, and to me, Joe, like even in dirt racing, you're going to find a guy that just dominates. I mean, like Jonathan Davenport, like just dominated at times with higher horsepower, but there's also you can still watch a guy lap everybody, but if everybody else is still competing inside the guy lapping everybody, you'll be entertained. And that's the part that I just don't understand. Like, you wanted apples and oranges comparison. Okay, let's say baseball. You go to a park and there's like no home runs hit. What's the first thing they do? Like, hey, let's bring the fences in. Well, that's going to cost money. Yeah, but we want to get people here. We want it to be entertaining. And it just seems like every time NASCAR finds a way to not be more entertaining, they go, oh, well, what about the money? And it's like, what are you doing? I mean, they literally came up with a splitter that lifted up and down depending upon the downforce. That took a shit ton of engineering, science, computer studies, all these different things to come up with just straight garbage that didn't even make it out. And another thing too, it may not even be these things. Like maybe horsepower is not the thing. Maybe it's back to 4 gears, so we don't have shifting, and they have to tune the motors a certain way. Now, increase of horsepower would mean different gear ratios, which mean different gear tuning, and all those things fall in place. But the 5th gear adds on top of that as well, because you hear guys shifting, which if they didn't shift anymore, there would actually have to be some thought process going into how you want to tune your car. And, it just seems like when you're when I'm looking at spending $100 plus taxes to go to Bristol next week, and I'm making a 4-hour trip. I know it's probably not going to sell out. So whenever I spill that $100, that's going to be rough. Then on top of it, you got to find a hotel, you got to park, and then, but I'm willing to do that 5 to 6 times a year. And then they're going to say, yeah, we really just don't want to spend the money to make ourselves a better product. Like, no, we want you to come, but we're not willing to do that same type of investment for our sport. And I think that's why it just turns a lot of people off with this next gen car right now. And it's just extremely frustrating to know that even if you talk to the people that aren't running NASCAR, they said it'd be an immediate fix. The drivers and the people that make the engines. Those are guys that know what the hell they're talking about. And to ignore them, I think is asinine. I just think it's a complete joke. And, I've been defending NASCAR for a while on terms of its most recent changes, but to continue to say we're not doing this, I don't have an answer, man. I just simply don't. And, and we want this product to be good. That's why we're frustrated. We want this to be a good product. It's not that we want every single race determined by 0.0003 seconds. That doesn't make a great race. You can have 3 piles of dog shit in between there and you end up with a decent finish on a green, white checker. That's not what makes a good race. It's tracks like we're talking about Martinsville being a dumpster fire. I went last year. One of the most boring things I've ever done in my entire life was go to Martinsville. Martinsville shouldn't die because of new technology. That's just how I feel.
No, so, yeah, I agree with you.
And I think you just look at, I think it's the same thing, like you said, what would happen in NASCAR if they say, hey, crew chiefs, let's all meet. Hey, drivers, you all come in. What package would you guys give us the package?
Joe or Travis, me and Joe have literally talked. I don't give a shit if they went to short tracks and ran the Xfinity cars and put the Cup drivers in them at this point. I don't care. Yeah. Like, I would be more entertained by that because they've had better products for 4 years now. I literally would not care.
And we said that, I think, at every short track last year, that the Xfinity or the truck race was a far more superior product. At Martinsville last year, perfect example. Yes. Great Xfinity race at Martinsville last year. Cup cars got out there and it was like, what in the hell are we watching? It's like, seriously, it's like the premier sport happens to be on Saturday this year when you go to a short track. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not an engineer, Travis. I really don't know what the fix is. Is it 750 horsepower? I don't know. But is it 650? But it's a hell of a lot more than what they have now. I know that.
What is your favorite package of all time? I can name mine right off the bat. I know one package that everyone could agree. It was 10 years ago, 2014. Those years were.
Tomorrow.
No,
was
that
the
was
horse? What was the
900. And that
Yeah.
was Larson's, not his rookie year, but his second year. Dude, it was there was so much passing. I think it was even a YouTube video about it. So much passing, so much like you could do whatever you wanted. You know, it was bottom top. People were passing each other, slide jobs. Oh my God, incredible. Incredible. You know, people could run against the fence, people could run bottom, people run middle. Incredible race. People could go from the back to the front, passing. So many like fun things. And I think
at
we
short
have a
tracks,
good
right?
y'all had short tracks, you had great, you know, whatever. You had everything. Road courses were fun, you know, and road courses were fun back in, you know, 2019, 2018, 2020, things like that, because 2021, good, but that was the old car. That was a Gen 6. But it was the Gen 6 car. You had 900 horsepower. You had you had a little bit more of a rear spoiler, so you know it had some drag to it. But you know, I think don't think that they didn't have a splitter. It was just, man, like, those were the days that you're just, like, watching a race going, people just they were racing, and I feel like now it's just, "Okay, track position, you know, what do we have to do on this? Okay, I gotta take a two-tired stop here so I can gain some spots here, and hopefully we get the right caution." Where, you know, if you had a bad pit stop back in 2014, like, "Oh, you know what? I could race here." You're fine, so, man, I had
Well,
900 horsepower.
I will say though, I mean, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for us as race fans because as much as we have hated the short tracks over the last 3 years, the mile and halves have gotten immensely better than what they were to
Yeah,
the previous generation. And
100%.
that's really what the next gen car was here to fix, right? Boring mile and a half races because NASCAR goes there literally more times than any other style of track. I do think, and I think with taking the stage cautions out of it, road courses have gotten immensely better than the previous generation. So, I mean, the next gen car has been, I think, a success outside of the short tracks. But this being the third year, understanding, and not to beat a dead horse, but understanding that this next gen car has all but killed the short tracks, and you're going to have to figure something out because that is not something that should die in this sport is short track racing. Let's figure something out. Let's make these races a little bit more exciting. Everywhere else, you're golden on. It's been great. So, you know, that's, you know, I just don't know. I just don't know what they can do at this point or what they
Mhm.
will do to state it better.
Yeah.
I think I know what they will do. I don't think they're going to do anything. I think they're going to keep it the way it has been, and I just don't feel like that's going to change. I wish I could find it for you guys. I was trying to look at something up while I was doing that. Um, you know, you talked about my favorite race car, favorite race package in a car. You know, I'm pretty positive it was right when Dale Jr. and I actually have a car of it. The car tomorrow. I mean, I'm pretty sure that was
1,000 horsepower.
900 horsepower as
It was a
well. A
1,000.
thousand. Okay, I was gonna say I thought it was 900 to 1,000. And dude, they were ripping Las Vegas during qualifying. He crossed the start finish line at 201 miles per hour. And like to think about that now and just hear that car like I mean he was freaking I mean they were slowing down 40 miles per hour in the turns. And that to me like that's just crazy to think about those things and how fast it was. But like why did NASCAR change it? Because they wanted their cars to look like the cars on the street. That,
Mhm.
that's the only reason why we got rid of the car tomorrow. It wasn't because of the racing. You know, the splitters needed work. We don't need to barely touch the grass and the splitters like fly off
Yeah.
and things of that nature. But, you know, what NASCAR has done has made a better product, like you said, Joe. I completely agree with the mile and a half, but it's like Thanos at what cost, you know, and there's a lot of people that love short track racing and, you know, there's got to be something that can be done.
Let's not remember.
There is something that can
Yeah.
be done,
Do
but
you I mean, do you not do you guys remember at Chicagoland in 2014 when you had Kevin Harvick, you had Brad Keselowski, Jeff Gordon, Kyle Larson, there was someone else up there, maybe Joe Logano, when they were, like, back and forth for, like, 20 laps, one another passing each other, doing this, doing that, and I remember, like, Brad Keselowski going, like, 3 right through the middle between it was Kevin Harvick and Larson, and then Gordon was there too, and they ended up passing them all, and then went off. Brad ended up winning the race. Like that is a great memory. And then I look back at some of the other races, like, oh my god, like incredible, whatever. So I just look at horsepower. I could be completely wrong with saying that horsepower increases stuff, horsepower this, horsepower that, but that's the only thing we haven't done yet. That is the last thing that NASCAR's not tried
We're
to
the only sport that's decreasing it when everybody else is staying the same. The technology has made it to where, Indy cars still go 220 miles an hour in the V4, like you were saying. Formula One cars still go, like this past weekend, 206 miles per hour on a street course by making a V10 a V6. Now, is it sound different? Is it look different? Is the product changed somewhat? Sure. But the technology has been there for the other sports to say, yeah, we don't have to cut horsepower. We're just going to change the way the horsepower is made. And NASCAR, it's like we're progressing on the car to a certain extent, but every single chance we get to bring down the horsepower, all in the name of money. And, these teams are already losing money. If you listen to Rick Hendrick, these teams are losing money, or Jeff Gordon, I believe it was. And they're the ones saying that we'll be willing to take the burden to make higher horsepower. It just doesn't make any sense. And as a NASCAR fan, it just drives you crazy. We're just sitting here, like when the baseball bats kept exploding and people were having shrapnel fly at their head, and baseball didn't just go, yeah, that's just something they're just gonna have to deal with.
Sorry about your eye, man.
Yeah. Don't throw it inside, asshole, and they won't break. I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
Well,
we want something good. And when the thing is, you're talking about what tracks fans love: Martinsville, Bristol. Those aren't the ones they want to see sacrifice. There's a lot of people outside of us that probably don't care that Kentucky sacrificed. I understand that sentiment, but if Bristol and Martinsville go down. When Bristol and Martinsville die, it really sucks, and you look at Bristol, that's a track that went from 15,000 seats to now it's legitimately a modern Coliseum.
Well,
and it's not because the racing sucked.
It's but where we're at, this is the third year. I think the first year of the next gen car, we sat and we watched the short tracks, and everybody's optimistic and says, well, it'll get better. And then last year, I think they actually got worse last year than the first year. I don't know.
Oh, I agree. They did get worse.
And then right now, I think we're being overly critical of Phoenix today. And like Shane Reed said, he's from Arizona. It's always been a boring track, and it has always been a boring track. I don't remember too many memorable things from Phoenix and my NASCAR fandom. But we're being overly critical of what we saw today because we saw it at Phoenix. And I think part of our conversation, or at least in my mind, should be, and we kind of had this earlier, so I'm backtracking, but what are we doing at Phoenix twice a year and for the championship? So, part of me being upset is has a lot to do with the track that they raced at today too. And sitting here talking, your opinions change. And Travis, I'm kind of on board with you at this point. Let's see what happens in Bristol. But I could tell you, if Bristol is an inferior product, again, I'm gonna be sitting here furious next week. So, that's where I'm at.
Let me ask you guys this for the final question. I think we're all conceding that Phoenix is not the place to hold your championship. If you got to be Steve Phelps for a day, what's the very first thing you would change in terms of the championship? Whether it was held at a certain racetrack, multiple racetracks, what's the thing that you would alter when it comes to deciding your champion here in this sport? Travis, I'll start with you.
I'd make it over 3 days. I'd make it over 3 races. Having one race decide a championship is hard. It's not where like Indiana basketball and stuff like that, where it's decided over one day. That's a little bit different. That's decided over 4 quarters if you really look at it that way. I just think, let's have a 3-race playoff, between stuff. Will the product be maybe not as good? I don't know, because the over those 3 races, they're going to focus on the same 4 drivers. But I don't know. Do we go back to that? I think let me rephrase this. I think you go back to get away from one race. Let's have over last 10 races, 3 races, 5 races, whatever. Have the 10 race championship, whatever you want to do on that. But I think we get away from the one race decides it all. Go back to where it used to be over 36 races, or go back to what we did in 2004 and have the last 10 races with 10 drivers. It's just I'm not a big fan of one race decides it all.
Is there a certain track or tracks that you would want to put it in?
I think if you go to like the 3 race stuff, you give it a short track, a road course, and a mile and a half. Or you have it where the 10 race you could have, like they used to have, where you had one super speedway, a couple short tracks, and the rest mile and a half. So if it was really all over again, give me back Homestead again. That decides races. That's a good race, but not a Phoenix. That's not it. That ain't it. Sorry.
Joe, you're Steve Phelps for a day. What would you?
Well,
do?
I'm gonna disagree with you, Travis, on everything. I am a huge fan of the one race championship. I think that it feels like a championship, right? I mean, you have your playoffs, you get to the championship, it's all on the line that day, and I enjoy that. I think it brings a lot of stress into it, especially if one of your drivers is one of those 4 drivers. I mean, it is what it is. I think that is great for the sport. Actually, I think if you make it over, you make it over 4 or 3 races. What if 3 different drivers win? Then what do? Go off points, and then what's the point of what we're doing anyway? As far as trying to have a championship. What I would like to see them do, and this is just something in my mind. I think every year at the end of the championship race, which is currently in Phoenix, I think that they should get take a fan, however you want to do it, put them in a drawing and let a fan that has won a sweepstake come down and spin a giant Wheel of Fortune wheel with every track on it. Whatever track it lands on, that's where the championship race is going to be. I think that would put excitement into it. I think it would put some spontaneity into it, and you're not in the same place every year. I mean, we don't play the Super Bowl in the same place every year. The World Series, I mean, could potentially be played in the same place every year, but it's the 2 teams that are in it. I don't see why NASCAR has to have their championship race at the exact same place every year.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Joe. Like, you could be playing outside at the Super Bowl, which they hardly ever do anymore, mainly because it poured down rain in the Colts-Bears championship game, so they said they'll never do that again. But, baseball, the parks are completely different. You still play the same game, but the parks are completely different, regardless of where it's at. So, I think you would determine what tracks that are your bread and butter, like make NASCAR. To me, if you decided that, we're going to do Daytona, which I don't even like, but I would consider it because it's Daytona, Darlington, Charlotte, and then a mile and a half. You choose your favorite mile and a half and say, we're going to Homestead. There you go. There's the mile and a half. Those are the 4 tracks that we're going to cycle through every single year. I would love that. And I think that there would be a lot of thought process, when it comes to that, be like, oh man, he made it to the championship 4 this year, when he knows next year the championship 4 would be at a better track for him. There's just certain things about that would be, very entertaining. But the fact that we know it's going to be at Phoenix, it's almost like we built up so much for the playoffs, like we got, back here, we got the Hail Melon, and then we got the championship race. Yeah. It just feels like such a letdown, but I'm with Joe. I do like the one race. I know that's not a popular thing, but at the same time, like, people are like, oh, it's not fair. And it's like, having 68 teams compete for an NCAA basketball championship is not fair. It's entertaining as hell, but it's not fair. Like, there's nothing fair about a team that goes technically undefeated in the Missouri Valley Conference, but loses its conference championship game and doesn't make the tournament. That's not fair, but it's entertaining as hell. Yeah. And I want to be entertained because more often than not, I'm going to be sad anyway, especially now that my driver drives for RCR and we'll never ever win a championship at Phoenix. So, I thought we had some great discussions. I mean, we literally could have turned this into its own show, and that's how you turn a boring 3-hour race into a 50-minute post race. So, if you guys are new to the channel and would love to hear more entertaining, thought-provoking post-race shows where literally the shows that are races that are the most boring might be our most entertaining post-race shows, where we try to, this is our group therapy. We come together, we try to figure out what the hell's going on, and then, set everybody straight, because we all just had to witness that for 3 hours. So let's commiserate together in our misery and get through it as one. But, we're all here because we love NASCAR and we want to see the best product. And like we said, if Kyle Larson won, it'd been a really short post race. It was a great race. Nobody has any changes besides Ryan, and we play. And RCR doesn't even need to unload in Phoenix. Fucking save gas. Just go to Bristol.
Yeah.
Don't go from Las Vegas to Bristol. Just cut that race out. So, do have one more. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. Thanks. We're glad that you're here, and everybody else that commented as well. So, Travis, you got any closing remarks here before we jump offline?
Don't underestimate Chevy. I think they're going to be just fine when it comes to Phoenix. And that's it.
And finish. Fiend. Joe, any closing remarks, sir, on Mr. Kentucky Speedway is dead?
Yeah, don't eat ice cream too fast.
Which side does it come out worse?
It's more of the head rush, kind of the brain freeze that you get is kind of what I'm getting at.
Joe,
and as far as Phoenix, I got nothing.
Hey Joe, you know our freak out was pretty good because they were not very good. Our freak out is they were not very good. So I guess Elliott was decent at the beginning, but our freak out was good.
Right.
So Ryan, if you got a freak out, they'll probably do good next week.
Yeah.
I did have a freak out. It was Buescher and Keselowski, and they finished second and fourth. The one thing that I will say is when Travis touts his package and about how impressive it's going to be, you're probably going to be let down.
I was very let down by your package today, Travis.
Yeah.
Although,
so for now on, we're sticking to
Ryan did say that Kyle Larson didn't run well, and actually Kyle Larson was probably actually the best at passing cars today. I'll just say that. That's my final thought.
He probably had 1,200 of the 2,400 passes in the race.
Right. He probably did.
He had the second most passed cars. Yeah. Now they were never above 10th place.
No, they weren't.
Did pass the second most amount of cars behind Christopher Bell. So, and if you want to also make a little bit of money with us, you can bet the farm and then be holding on to your butts on the very, very last lap on a hammer bet. But as long as your bank account's bigger, that's all that matters. So make sure you join in on our Friday shows as we do the betting shows as well. But for Travis Butt, for Joe Spillman, my name is Ryan Peters. Thank you guys for joining in. And this is the end of the post-race show.